Good
Is that no?
good morning or afternoon, everyone, depending on when you're watching this, because time means very little right now. I'm Alexander, and then with me, as always, is Kara from the Center Branch. I'm from
Hi
River Park.
everyone.
We're here to talk about comics, and today's theme is Neil Gaiman, who's kind of the grandmaster of artsy, nerd, gothy comics. Yeah, he's one of those few modern authors that is legitimately a household name, to the point where I think people forget he started out as a comic author before a novelist and TV writer and public intellectual. What else we got? He's got 5 trillion titles. So Kara's gonna go first with
Marvel 1602 is what we're starting with. And so Neil Gaiman has his foot in, you'll see, like kind of both comic worlds. This Marvel 1602 is a one-off that poses the question, what if all of our Marvel heroes existed in Elizabethan England? And I am not, I'll preface this by saying that I am more of a DC fan than a Marvel fan, but I really, really enjoyed this one. Basically, it starts when Queen Elizabeth the First calls Doctor Strange and Sir Nicholas, who's of course Nick Fury, to help her because she believes the world is ending. They have 3 main enemies in this story. The first is the Grand Inquisitor of Spain, who is actually Magneto. And then there's Otto von Doom, which if you're not a huge Marvel fan, that's one of the main enemies of the Fantastic Four. And then also, of course, King George of Scotland is one of Queen Elizabeth's main enemies. So the fun in this comes in predicting who is going to fill what role in this 1602 world. And some of the heroes are really obvious, but some are not, and some have roles and names that are slightly different. So, for example, Daredevil, they just call him the Devil, which is, like, really fits with, you know, that time. And then Charles Xavier, who is, of course, Magneto's archenemy, or he's, you know, our hero. He is Carlos Javier. And we have Peter Parker as Peter Parquar. And mutants are referred to instead as witchblood. So they, in the same way as in the X-Men, they have to keep themselves secret from the general public. And in this one shot, Neil Gaiman has this way of explaining how all of these Marvel characters came to be in 1602, or why exactly we're reading about this specific time period, and has a really creative way about wrapping things up, which I'm not going to give away.
I just really like how you have 2 bona fide Marvel supervillains, textbook guys, and then King George of Scotland.
Yeah.
On the same level as Doctor Doom. Which, side note, for anybody that is really interested in Doctor Doom, they continue the Infinity Gauntlet story in the comics, and he gets an amazing story arc. So, just a side note, use Hoopla, get those comics.
Yeah.
The other thing, I mean, this is another one that is just so Neil Gaiman, it hurts. He loves breaking down origin stories. He loves messing with the essence of characters by putting them in different timelines or settings. And yeah, this was a lot of fun. And I mentioned earlier to Kara that I liked this one in particular because I like a big mashup of all my heroes. So I used to be really, 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 really broke. And so I needed the most dudes for my meager allowance. And big fan of it. Next week, oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to mention one more thing. One thing, as you were talking, I remembered it. One thing I really liked about this too is that not all of our heroes like start where we know them to be. So like Peter / Spider-Man, he doesn't have his spider powers yet, but he's like really like interested with spiders and stuff like that. So it's kind of neat to see our heroes like developing in this world as well.
Can he escape his destiny? Wherever you put him, he's going to end up as Spider-Man, basically.
Right.
All right. So next we're switching over to DC with Sandman. This is his claim to fame. This is what made Neil Gaiman Neil Gaiman. It's Sandman is the it follows the endless, which are all D's, like dream, death, destiny, desire, despair, delirium. They're all anthropomorphic personifications of their names. So the main character, Dream, also goes by Morpheus. He is the king of dreams. He controls dreams and fiction. And at the beginning of this, he has been imprisoned for 70 years because an occultist wanted to achieve immortality by imprisoning him. So he gets out, tries to exact his revenge, and notices what happened for 70 years without him, without dreams or fiction, or at least the control over it. And so it's the rest of the story is kind of him atoning for past sins, because, you know, being in prison for 70 years will change a person, even if you're billions of years old. And so it's him basically realizing he's been stodgy and a horrible lover, and just atoning for the mistakes of an immortal personification of an idea. All he can do. But what's fun about this is it's lots of short stories in this big world. So you meet Batman and Green Lantern in this first book. John Constantine's in this. Lucifer is a straight spin-off of Sandman. So if you're watching that TV series right now, this is exactly where it comes from. At one point, Lucifer tricks Morpheus into taking over hell. And so Lucifer's like, awesome, I'm taking a vacation. This has been awful. And there you go. One of my favorite things that makes this super Gaiman is if you go and look at Dream, he looks like Robert Smith from The Cure and dresses apparently just like Gaiman. So, you know, black jeans, black shirt, robes. It's so 80s goth. It's painful, but I love it. I mean, Death, she's, you know, cami, ankh necklace, ashy skin, sharp eyeliner, you know.
Nice. This is one that's been on my list for a long time, and I still haven't read it yet, but hopefully I'll get to it one day.
Now's the time. It's fantastic. It plays with every mythology because the main character is also the personification of fiction. You meet Shakespeare, you meet all sorts of, you meet muses. I think Calliope was one of his lovers in this. He just plays around with stories and story as a concept. It's a lot of fun, really metatextual. Absolutely worth everyone's time.
Great. So, since there's those mythology figures in this makes a good tie-in to our summer reading theme as well, which is imagine your story. It's focused on folk tales and mythology. Up here at the top, you can see that they say he's the best-selling author of the Graveyard Book, so that's the next one we're gonna talk about. This this is a graphic adaptation. So originally this was a book of his that won the Newbery.
Also, I'm going to interrupt. It also won the Hugo the same year, so it won the Kid and the Grown Up Award.
It's won
so
a few different awards. So this is a really great book. I read the book itself and I really liked it, and I really enjoyed reading the comic as well. So basically the story opens with the murder of a family, but the baby escapes from its crib and he wanders into the graveyard. So the beginning of it is like actually really visceral, but the rest of the story I feel is more of like a spooky yet whimsical tale.
It's almost a direct adaptation of the Jungle Book, except Neil Gaiman. So yeah, instead of jungle animals, he's raised by. It never outright says it's a vampire, but I mean, look at him on the cover there. and all the ghosts and everything. And it's done in short story format in the book itself, each a different year in Bod's life. And it's just an amazing read in whatever format you can get it.
Right, exactly. So basically, he's protected and raised by the ghosts and the guardian of the graveyard, who's Silas, who is this vampire-looking creature you see. And like Alexander said, it never explicitly says he's a vampire. He often references the fact that he's neither living nor dead, so you can kind of infer it. And of course, in the graphic adaptation, he really does look like your stereotypical version of a vampire. He's even got the popped collar. But I think that's kind of some of the charm here is that you can just infer and use your imagination.
It's kids' first chance to kind of figure something out through context.
Right.
Which I always appreciate that authors sometimes do.
Right. And so the boy is given the name Nobody Owens, the last name Owens, because that's the name of the two ghosts who kind of adopt him. And no one can really decide on his name, so they name him Nobody. And he goes by Bod. So despite our violent beginnings, the book, like I said, it actually takes the form of a spooky yet whimsical discovery story. In each section, he's discovering a different part of the graveyard, or maybe a different entity in the graveyard. So there's the Indigo Man, who is basically a guardian who guards this cursed treasure underneath the ground. And then we have these ghouls that he encounters and then has to escape. And there's a werewolf involved in that. And then we also have a witch who's buried outside of consecrated ground in Potter's Field. So it kind of explores these different paranormal aspects of the graveyard, but also maybe different things that you would find there. And throughout, there are also these snippets reminding us that the man Jack from the beginning, the man who tried to kill the whole family, he still has to finish his job for some reason. So that there's that mystery that's propelling us forward here as well. And this is the volume 1 covers the first half of the Graveyard book. So this is number 1 of 2.
I love the ghouls, by the way. The whole section with the ghouls is exactly Mowgli getting abducted by King Louie to teach him fire. But the ghouls all have amazing names. I think they're super long titles, and then the werewolf is babysitting him and has to kind of go down in the depths of hell to get him back, just like Baloo did. So,
right,
yeah, big old fan of this.
Yeah, this was a good one. I like it.
All right. And then, so this last one is not a graphic novel, but I discovered it digging through Hoopla. It ties into us as a library system directly, considering our last one book, one Michiana title was Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. Well, it turns out Neil Gaiman wrote his literal biography and was close personal friends with him, and you can get it on Hoopla. It's missing a lot of the standard Neil Gaiman touches. This is really early in his career when he was kind of a hired gun. His first published book, in fact, I think was a biography of Duran Duran, if I recall correctly. So this was kind of one of those contract books, but he ended up becoming personal friends with Douglas Adams. They have a very similar aesthetic, at least as far as humor is concerned. So if you were a fan of Hitchhikers, this is an easy checkout on Hoopla, just to kind of see this neat little crossover. It's one of his more ignored works. So just wanted to mention it because we're still the only library to have ever chosen Hitchhikers as our one book, and I'm still super proud of that.
Awesome.
All right, so that concludes Comic Chat for this week. Join us as always next week when we'll have more great picks. And don't forget to continue to use our curbside services. It's going really well, even though librarians' feet are really tired right now, but keep them coming. Keep checking out those books. Keep showing us your faces, even if it's behind a mask. But thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everyone.